When the fake cops showed up to tow my car at 2 in the morning, I honestly thought it was some kind of prank. But when I saw those plastic badges glint under the streetlight and my government-issued SUV hooked up to their truck, I realized this wasn't about a parking violation. This was an ambush by my own neighborhood. I'd moved to Brookhaven Ridge 3 weeks earlier. After 20 years with the Bureau, I just wanted quiet sprinklers at night, kids on bikes, maybe the sound of a lawnmower on a Saturday morning. Normal. I didn't realize normal here came with its own enforcement squad. That night, I opened the blinds and saw them 2 figures in tactical shirts that read HOA Police across the back. One had zip ties on his belt, the other carried a clipboard like it was a badge. And behind them, standing on the sidewalk in her bathrobe, was Karen Miller, our self-appointed HOA president, the queen of manicured lawns and petty tyranny. Morning Agent Turner, she called, voice syrupy and smug. You're in violation of Community Code 14B, unauthorized vehicle on private property. I stepped onto the porch, heart steady, tone calm. That's a federal vehicle, Karen. She smiled like she'd rehearsed it. We restructured. The board voted to create a community police division. Funny, I said. State records still show your HOA dissolved 2 years ago. The taller man shifted uneasily, waiting for her cue. That told me everything. These weren't officers. They were hired muscle. You've got 5 seconds to leave my property, I said quietly. The woman with the clipboard laughed. You think being FBI puts you above the rules? I didn't answer. My phone buzzed Director Cole. He never called me at this hour. Get to HQ now, he said. No explanation. When I looked back through the peephole, the fake cops were still there and Karen was smiling like a cat that had just found a canary. That was the moment I knew this wasn't about a car, it was about control. The next morning, I found an envelope on my doorstep. Notice of violation. $5,000 fine. They'd printed it on letterhead that looked official enough to fool anyone not paying attention. But I was paying attention. I marched down to their so-called office, a beige trailer beside the playground. Karen sat behind a folding table covered in clipboards and fake tulips. Agent Turner, she said sweetly. I hoped you'd come to clear this up. Clear it up, I tossed the notice on the table. You sent imposters to my house. They're private contractors, she replied smoothly. Community safety officers. Entirely legal. Not when their badges say police, I shot back. Karen leaned forward, eyes sharp. You seem tense. Maybe you're not used to living under neighborhood rules. I almost laughed. Neighborhood rules don't override federal law. Her smile didn't waver, but I saw the flicker of panic before the mask returned. You know, she said, people talk. They say you claim to work for the FBI, but no one's seen proof. That line wasn't random. It was bait. She wanted me defensive. I just smiled. That's one theory. The other is that your HOA can't enforce anything because it doesn't legally exist. Her lips tightened. We're in the process of renewal. Good luck with that, I said, walking out. I caught a glimpse of a camera above the door, non-city model, cheap Chinese brand. She was recording everyone. I remember thinking, this isn't a neighborhood, it's a test site. The next day, a video of me arguing with those fake cops hit the neighborhood forum. Edited, slowed down. My voice distorted to sound threatening. The caption read, FBI agent intimidates community officers. Within hours, it spread through Facebook groups, next-door threads, even my bureau email. Neighbors I hadn't met started avoiding me. Kids stopped playing in my driveway. And by noon, I got a message from HQ. Report to Internal Affairs. Concerns about public conduct. When I stepped into Cole's office, he didn't ask me to sit. We've received complaints, he said. 10 signatures videos. You're being accused of threatening community officers. Those weren't officers, I argued. They were hired by Karen Miller. The HOA was dissolved. He rubbed his temples. Jack, you're a good agent, but this looks bad. Maybe take some leave. Clear your head. I stared at him. You think I'm imagining this? He sighed. 48 hours before this goes to disciplinary review. That's when doubt crept in. Maybe I was seeing ghosts. Maybe the years in the field had rewired me. When you've chased corruption long enough, sometimes you start seeing it everywhere. That night, my phone buzzed with a text. You don't belong here. No emoji, no signature. I nearly packed up and left. But then a familiar name flashed on my screen, Miguel Alvarez. Local PD. Old friend. Heard you're making headlines, he said. Need backup. Within 20 minutes, he was in my driveway shining a flashlight on the cameras mounted along my eaves. Private surveillance on public property, he muttered. Illegal. He traced the serial numbers. Registered to a shell company, Silver Shield Security, Nevada. Karen's outfit, I said. He nodded slowly. You're not dealing with a rogue HOA. This is organized. That was the moment my doubt turned to fire. We started digging bank transfers, invoices, shell accounts. Every violation fine residents paid went straight into Silver Shield's pockets. Karen wasn't enforcing community order. She was funding a racket. Then came the knock at midnight. Jack. It's Tamara, a voice whispered. I opened the door to see my neighbor's slipper-soaked eyes red clutching a folder. They fined me $500 for having guests after 9, said I'd end up like the Harrisons if I kept questioning them. I opened the folder. Photos of her house at night, her sister's car, her kids' bikes. They're watching us, she whispered. I promised to help, though I wasn't sure how. But as I watched her leave, I realized what Karen was doing, using fear as currency. And people were paying. Alvarez and I compiled everything. One invoice caught his eye. Silver Shield payments routed through Langston Holdings, a D.C. firm leasing space from Brookhaven Investments. Karen's trust, I muttered. He flipped another page and froze. You're gonna love this. Oversight Liaison. Cole Harrison, my director. I stared at the document, the air thick. You telling me Cole's in on this? Alvarez met my eyes. Looks that way. The next morning I confronted him. Cole didn't even flinch. You ever wonder why the Bureau doesn't meddle in neighborhood disputes? He asked. Because sometimes it's easier when citizens police themselves. You're funding intimidation networks, I snapped. He sighed. Control requires structure, Jack. We're just ensuring stability. You've crossed the line. No, he said softly. I erased it. I walked out, shaking the walls of HQ, suddenly colder than any crime scene I'd ever stood in. That night, the power went out. Only my house, every other porch, still glowing. When I stepped outside, I found an envelope under the doormat. Inside, a photo of me and Alvarez at a diner taken from above. On the back. You're not as invisible as you think. That's when I knew the storm had started. We came up with a plan, bait them. I leaked a message through a burner account hinting at a hidden drive in my garage containing evidence of Karen's operation. Alvarez set up sensors and hidden cameras parked 2 blocks away with his laptop live streaming everything. Midnight. Then 1. Then at 2:15, the lock on my side gate clicked. 2 figures in tactical gear moving like trained professionals. These weren't neighborhood thugs, they were federal grade. Target located, one whispered into his mic. They crept into the garage. I waited until both were inside, then triggered the flashbang, non-lethal, just blinding. Federal agent, I shouted, stepping out, pistol drawn. One reached for his weapon, but Alvarez crashed through the back door. Gun leveled. Hands up. They froze. I snatched the comm mic from one of their collars. It was still active. This is Special Agent Jack Turner, I said into it. Who's commanding this operation? Static. Then a familiar voice. Stand down, Agent Turner. That's an order. Cole, you sent them, I said quietly. You're interfering with an internal investigation, he replied coolly. Surrender your weapon. You mean the evidence that ties you to Silver Shield? Static again. Then his voice turned cold. You've gone too far. I looked at Alvarez. He just confirmed everything. We cuffed the 2 operatives, searched their gear, fake warrants, encrypted phones, burner IDs. One of them muttered, You think this ends with her? You're wrong. On one phone, Alvarez found text threads. KM, proceed with extraction. CH, secure the drive, neutralize resistance if needed. We had them, Karen, Cole, the whole network. 2 days later, we called a community meeting. A mandatory HOA assembly, just like Karen loved. The room was packed, residents whispering confused. Karen stood at the podium in her cream blazer, that fake smile painted on. Good evening, neighbors, she began. Before we start, let's remember order keeps us safe. I stepped forward. You're right about one thing, I said. We're about to restore order. She blinked. Agent Turner. Save it. I cut her off, slamming a folder on the table. Here's your order, forged citations. Fake police contracts, bank transfers to your personal account, and messages from your friend, Director Harrison. Gasps filled the room. Karen's voice cracked. You can't prove any of that. Alvarez raised his badge. Actually, we can. You're under arrest for impersonating law enforcement, wire fraud, and conspiracy. The crowd erupted, neighbors shouting, crying, recording. The same cameras she'd used to control them were now pointed at her. As deputies cuffed her, she leaned close and hissed, You think this ends with me? He'll come for you next. I met her eyes. Then at least he'll have to do it in daylight. They led her out the door, closing behind her. The room went silent, no applause, no cheers, just relief. For a moment I thought it was over, until a week later I saw the headline, Director Cole Harrison resigns. Personal reasons. No charges, no accountability. Figures. That night I came home to a brown paper package on my porch. Inside a USB drive labeled, For Agent Turner. I plugged it in. Drone footage of me leaving the bureau, walking to my car, camera zooming on my house. Then a message appeared in white letters. You stopped one network. You didn't stop us. I sat there in the dark, the hum of my laptop filling the room, and I smiled, small, tired, unafraid. Because when people like them hide behind fake authority, the truth doesn't just expose them, it burns. Sometimes justice doesn't come from the system. It comes from those who refuse to stay quiet.